Hello, greetings, and well met. I think that you might fancy yourself a Diablo 2 speedrunner, but clearly you've come here for a reason. Now, the pacifist, that's the true mark of a D2 speedrunner. Uh, well, kind of. At the very least, it can sometimes be faster than the barbarian, at least. What is the pacifist? Well, first and foremost, I'm going to include the speedrun.com list of rules for the subcategory of pacifist down below. But realistically, in a nutshell, what it means is that we are not able to, either directly or inadvertently, cause damage to, fight, attack, or kill any of the monsters in this game. Now, Mac, how are we going to do that and still beat the game? Well, the monsters can bring about their own demise, at the very least. To do that, we're going to be utilizing a couple very specific types of items, namely the affix of thorns, which is attacker takes damage, chance to cast spells, like chance to cast Charge Bolt or chance to cast Nova, and lastly, we're going to have the thorns aura, because this is going to be for the fastest current world record speed for the Paladin Pacifist run. First and foremost, if you're here already, I'm just going to go ahead and assume that you know the basics of a regular Diablo 2 speedrun. You've either watched a ton of it or done it yourself. So we're not going to be going over the raw basics, literally how to play the game, how to make good decisions and all of that. What we will do is we're going to touch on any basics that change or have a new priority or new understanding when trying to run the game as a pacifist. And then on top of that, we're going to be getting into like the deep minutia of how to start the run, how to complete the run, everything in between, and all the different types of decisions that you can make during a pacifist run. With the world record held by Blizzard Flamewing being just over 2 hours and 26 minutes, this run is pretty tight as it stands. Now, theoretically, working with a couple different people inside of this pretty awesome little niche community of the D2 speedrunners, we're thinking that it might bottom out somewhere around like 210, 215 if you could get yourself a perfect run, but already we're talking about a very optimized run for something where you don't get to attack anything. So when there is an opportunity, what we have here right now is a full speed run, a fully completed speed run. I include the do's, I include the definitely don'ts, I include the very very humbling experiences that I had while trying to get the footage together for this run. And I'm going to go over each individual portion of it so that you have the best idea of not only why we're doing it, but how we're doing it and how you can try to accommodate or incorporate some of these ideas if you're going to try the run yourself. How does a pacifist speedrun work? Well, first and foremost, it is a player's X speedrun. That means that anytime the player who is running can choose to change the players count using the /players command. We're going to abuse this both in the early game, throughout Act 1 and Act 2, and in certain circumstances we're going to be using it when popping chests, but ultimately right at the beginning of the run you're going to be starting off at players 8 because we need to find a very important item, and that is a chipped skull. The chip skull is the creme de la creme of early game pacifist itemization. You can put 2 of these bad boys into a socketed shield and you'll be returning 8 damage anytime any monster attacks you. Oddly enough, in Act 1, especially since we're going to be farming Rakanishu and Bishibosh, at least in the beginning of the game, um, 8 damage is a huge amount of their health pool, even if you increase their total hit points using players count. So at least 1 and up to 2 skulls can drastically increase the speed of leveling up to level 6 and then up to level 11 in the early game. Before we even begin our run, we're going to go ahead and make a character and we're going to put in a little sneaky trick that's going to save us a lot of time. What you see us doing here is actually inputting the players command to set players up to players 8, which is the highest players count. This is going to drastically increase the amount of items that drop when we open up chests. It is going to increase creatures' total hit points by an additional 50% for every player's setting that we increase, meaning at players 8, they're going to have 450% of their base hit points. It's also going to increase the XP that they give us up to 450% of their base XP. A little additional point to this is that it does increase monsters' damage. It increases it by something around like 6.8% per player's count, meaning up at players 8, they're going to be doing about 50% more damage. It's kind of relevant. It's not a super big deal. We're going to have to play around with that a little bit later on in the run so we can make sure that we can kill things quickly without them killing us in response. But what you can actually do is input this command multiple times in a row, and this will basically cache the fact that you've put the command in. The reason why this is so helpful is because later on we'll be able to hit enter and the up arrow key, and this will remember the last command that we put in, so that we can very quickly change player setting when it's relevant, as opposed to having to completely type it out all the way. Now, very important, just right off the bat, you're going to want to do a couple different things. You'll see that I've set throw as a hotkey on my left click, and we've set it to throw. Now, why would we do that? Well, if you're set to throw as your primary left click attack and you don't have a throwing weapon, you actually can't do anything other than move and interact with objects, chests, shrines, etc. We also want to set unsummon. Oddly enough, we're not going to be summoning anything during this run. You're not allowed to have pets or mercenaries. But this also means that attack won't be on our right click, just in case we happen to misclick at some point. This is going to stop us from attacking things. Now, in the pacifist run, you are not allowed to attack at all. Even if you miss, even if your attack deals no damage, even if you cast a spell and it goes wide from your target, you are not allowed to take any aggressive actions towards any monster. It immediately nullifies your run. It gets expunged. Luckily, the community itself kind of regulates this, so other people watching your run, if they happen to see it, will have to report it. So you really want to make sure that you have throw bound to your left click and unsummon bound to your right click. And not only that, you're going to want to swap weapons. Now, I know you don't have any weapons in your offhand, but in case you ever accidentally swap during the run, you want to have these keys already bound there as well. Very important to note, there is a glitch in this game that sometimes happens, and we have a great example of this later on in the run, which I'm not too proud of, but I figured I'd leave it in there so that you all can see exactly when it happens. But when you switch gear, change the weapon you're holding, swap your gear, pick up new gear that gets automatically equipped, sometimes your key bindings automatically revert back to basic melee attack. So you're going to want to be really cautious when you're buying new gear in Act 2, or you're picking up stuff from Charcy, or you're equipping a new amulet that you just found on the ground, that you're always checking your left and right keys to make sure that they are still bound to throw and a non-aggressive skill, either a paladin aura or unsummon at all times. I can't stress this enough. You'll see that we're passing by a couple shrines here. The only shrine that really matters in the beginning of this run is the stamina shrine, just so that you don't have to waste any time toggling run walk. And we are going to try to pop every single chest, boulder, and body that we find. Now, what if you get a run going and you don't find a chipped skull? It doesn't mean that you can't complete a run and that you won't get a good time either. You are able to buy a set of gear that includes body armor, a belt, and a shield that have the suffix of thorns. Of thorns says attacker takes 1 damage. With 3 pieces, that means you can only get up to 3 damage, which is already less than 1 chipped skull, but it's not the worst case. You can definitely do the run. You're going to be a bit slower getting up to level 6. Once you have Thorn's aura, it kind of becomes null, and it's no longer really a big concern, although the world record does have 1 chipped skull, and my second place submission and also all of my additional world record attempts recently have had 2 chipped skulls, meaning I'm returning 8 damage per attack per creature. So you are looking for items that will sell for a massive amount of gold, so you can go buy your gear without having to worry about it, and also pick up enough potions to survive. But we're really, really looking for that skull. At this point, in the speedrun itself, we are resetting for top left map, and we're resetting for chip skull. If we don't get that before trying to farm Rakanishu, the run's over. To give you an idea of what kind of timetable we're looking at here, we want to begin leveling with whatever gear we're going to be wearing by the 2 to 3 minute mark to be able to get a chance at a world record pace. In some of our runs, we've been level 6 as early as 8 minutes, which is really, really aggressive and is only possible with a really good waypoint next to Rakanishu in the stony field, and with a chip skull, if not more than 1. We have enough money at this point that while I'm making some decisions here, I'm thinking I'm going to go buy of Thorns gear when luckily a skull drops for us. So I already know that we have a chance at the run. I just need to go. I need to buy. I would like to buy a 2-socket shield, so in case I find another skull, I'm not wasting it or unable to use it later on. So we're going to quickly shop here at Charcy. If we also happen to find any gear that reads of thorns, so again body armor or belt, we'd gladly pick that up because that's an additional half-chip skull. And we'd also pick up any gear that's level 3 required and says chance to cast charge bolt. Early on, chance to cast charge bolt does an incredible amount of damage, especially to something like Rakanishu's minions. And the additional bonus of sometimes being able to hit ranged units is really, really important. So if you happen to pick it up, that's great. If you don't, you would never stop or run to hard shop for it, though.
Greetings.
So here, I don't find anything of thorns, and I don't find sockets, so we have to go shop again, but I will pick up a belt, just because it's better to have one, even if it doesn't have thorns on it. We do find our 2-socket. I don't find anything else. Now, one of the important things that you'll see me do here is pick up a bunch of trash gear. Your items have durability. Now, it doesn't really come up a lot of the time in most runs. You might see somebody have to fix their gear once or twice, but the only way we deal damage is by getting hit. So the more pieces of gear that you have, the more evenly it distributes durability damage, meaning you'll have to come back to Chara to repair less and waste less gold, which is really important for optimizing the beginning of the run. So while we're shopping here, I want to go over how attacker takes damage really works. So if something were to hit you, not miss you, not be blocked, if something were to hit you, first, it calculates how much attacker takes damage you have in total, and deals that damage to the target. And then the attack hits. Not only that, it deals damage as physical damage. So if you are a necromancer with amplify damage, which increases physical damage being dealt, that would increase attacker takes damage. It's actually really important for the necromancer version of the pacifist run. Now you'll see here, right next to our waypoint, we actually find the Bishibosh camp. The Bishibosh camp is really important. The other thing to note, and you're going to see me doing it a lot, and yes, it will hurt your hand if you haven't done it before, is we're going to be continuously running back and forward. The way Diablo 2 is coded is you have a defense stat, and your level in comparison to the level of the monster determines their chance to actually hit you. If you are completely still, your total defense is used in this calculation. If you are running, so not just walking, but if you are running, your defense stat is not calculated at all, meaning everyone who can hit you will hit you as long as they are in range when they finish their attack. So we are going to be running backwards and forwards, trying to angle ourselves up against monsters that have a higher priority, so things that we actually want to kill. For Fallen Shaman, a little bit of a tip, they will auto-attack if you are directly next to them. So you'll see me trying to stay right up next to Rakanishu this entire time, in hopes that he'll actually melee attack us. Rakanishu can drop 2 items, since he is a super unique, or he will always drop at least 2 items. These can be gems, and equally importantly, they can be rare versions of shields or armor. A rare armor, so a yellow armor, at this point can roll up to 6 total bonuses or affixes on it. And since there aren't that many affixes available at low level, they will typically roll with faster hit recovery, attacker takes damage, chance to cast charge bolt, life or mana, and some resistances. So if we can get attacker takes damage and chance to cast charge bolt and lightning res on more than one piece of armor, that would be fantastic because it greatly improves our ability to survive Rakanishu. Now, if you've watched a lot of speedruns, you'll know that Rakanishu is secretly the endgame boss for every character level 3 to 6. Rakanishu absolutely can and will kill you, and he's going to kill us a couple times on this run. The better chance of you surviving Rakanishu, i.e. the better gear you have, the faster you're going to be able to level. Now right here, you saw me go into my inventory, pick up my shield, and re-equip my shield. There's a very weird glitch that when you level up, the game no longer recognizes whether or not you have sources of attacker takes damage. So you're actually forced to equip a piece of, or remove a piece of gear and re-equip it for the game to recognize that you're actually wearing it at all. This only seems to happen with attacker takes damage. It doesn't seem to happen with bonus health or hit recovery or resistances. But we haven't spent too much time testing that. We just know that every time you level, you're going to want to swap a piece of gear. It doesn't have to be the shield. It can be the ring, it can be the sword, whatever. But the shield seems to only infrequently cause the hotkey glitch to happen. So I typically will pick up my shield and re-equip it and just make sure that I hit my hotkey for throw right off the bat, even if I don't see a change. Now you'll see that we're level 3 already. We're running around at players 2. And at this point, I feel pretty confident since we got that second skull that we're going to be able to handle Rakanishu. So we're going to try to make a mad dash towards the stony field. We are going to try to keep our eye out for good shrines. So an XP shrine is really good up until level 6. At level 6, a skill shrine is also pretty helpful as it does increase your thorns aura. And each point in thorns aura increases your total damage by 40%. So getting +2 from a skill shrine means we're dealing an additional 80% damage, which is super huge on the thorns aura, especially when we're trying to quickly level. And we're around the 7-minute mark, which level 3 for 7 minutes is okay if you're going for world record pace, as long as you end up getting an amazing Rakanishu spawn, which sadly we don't get. But we actually come out, well, I'll let you all see that later. You'll see that we found a magic scepter. Now we are going to try to collect chip gems along the way. 1, because we have to generate a ton of gold in Act 2. But 2, if we could re-roll a scepter using the 3 chip gem Herodra Cube recipe, it might get plus to vigor, it might get plus to thorns, it might give us a resistance aura that we don't have access to. And even if it doesn't come up with anything, we'll typically sell for 10,000 gold in Act 2, which is bare minimum good enough. Now, as far as skill points and attributes, the only attribute that you need is vitality. The only time that you would put points into anything else would be putting them into strength, to be able to wear chain boots if you get faster run walk, which is obviously super important for this run. Ideally, we'd like to get Hussar's boots off of Andariel, because I think you need roughly a minimum of 25 fire resistance to be able to safely navigate the Chaos Sanctuary once we get there. But vitality is the only thing we need to put points into. We don't use any mana. We're only going to be using Thorns Aura, Vigor Aura, and Cleansing Aura once we get that. So everything else is completely useless. We don't need mana. You'll see that we're at players 5 right now. I figure we're running around, we're trying to loot bodies, get more gear, and we're also looking for the waypoint now that we've found Rakanishu. We did find an XP shrine. There's no real way for us to use it now that we've already killed Rakanishu, but we want to make special note that we have a shrine right there, because we're going to want to check that every time we go up against Rakanishu. Because it's a flat bonus increase of 50% XP, and since we're at a higher player's level already, that means big returns when we are farming him. Now I'm going to try to only highlight when we're making some type of decisions. I'm going to try to speed through this as well, because honestly all we're doing is farming Rakanishu, getting his loot, going in selling, and doing it again until we get to around levels 8, 9, and 10. It kind of depends on exactly what your layout is, but ideally we'd like to be level 11 before we leave Act 1. You'll see we're checking the shrine, we're fighting Rakanishu. Players 5 is a bit aggressive here. You'll see, I think I actually die on this one. Players 5 is really aggressive. Even with the additional chip skull, even though we're doing a lot more damage, everything around us is also doing a lot more damage. And you'll see that his minions tend to scatter whenever anything else dies. So if you get any minions in there that aren't part of Rakanishu's crew, so we have these little fallen here, when they die, his people are going to scatter, and every time they scatter is another second that you're not getting XP from them. So realistically, I think players 3 until level 6, unless you have a really clean Rakanishu spawn that's very close, is probably the best way to go. At level 6, we are going to increase the players count all the way up to players 8. Our Thorns aura is going to be doing so much damage that we can basically survive anything that Rakanishu and his little gang can throw at us. Since we're coming up on level 6 here, this is probably going to be the last time that you see Prayer Aura. Prayer Aura is really just a prerequisite, since we're going to be going down to Vigor Aura at level 18. And now we have Thorns. So you're going to see me swap over Thorns. Thorns is now our primary, and I'm going to set the player setting up to players 8. Means the next time that we spawn everything, they're going to be giving us maximum XP. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Gear that is really good for a player to find in the early game. We're also going to go ahead and pick up the prerequisite Defiance Aura. You never use Defiance Aura. It increases your defense, and increased defense means you're going to get hit less, so we really don't want that. This helmet right here, it's giving us faster hit recovery and lightning resistance, and it repairs itself. The repairs itself is low-key a really, really good affix here. The hit recovery means we're going to be able to run faster and for longer without being interrupted. The lightning resist means we're going to be taking 9% less damage from Rakanishu, which is huge since we just bumped his damage up to 50% at players 8. And the repairs durability means that every time this hat ends up taking some of that durability damage we were talking about earlier, it's going to fix itself. So that means that all of our gear basically has more hit points, so we're not going to have to repair as often. Also, what you're going to see is I'm going to be trying to shop for a plus to Thorns Scepter. There are a couple other things you might pick up here. Resist Fire is also really good, depending on whether or not you're utilizing an older strategy or the most recent strategy. Nowadays, we don't need plus to resist fire, although it is nice to have it. Plus to Thorns will cost you anywhere between 6,000 to 20,000 gold, unless you find something with like +3 to Thorns, +3 to Defiance, +3 to, Holy Bolt, whatever. That's going to cost you 100,000 gold. But a White Scepter with just plus to Thorns on it, +2 is 12k. Typically, it's going to come along with some other plus to skill, plus to prayer, plus to might, or whatever. That gets you up to 20k. But a White Scepter with just +1 to Thorns, only 6,000 gold. So we are at the point where I could have theoretically purchased one, and every time I go back to Akara, I am going to check. Ultimately, we do find one later, but it does take us a bit. Also, really important, quick little side note, have stamina potions. If you run out of stamina, you go into walking. That means that people are less likely to hit you, meaning you won't return Thorns damage to them. Thorns damage also returns as physical damage, and it directly multiplies how much damage you would take. So if something deals 5 damage to you and you have level 1 Thorns, that means you're going to return 10 damage to them. Just as a side note, you want to have stamina potions on you because at any time we might want to move forward, and we might have to run for an extended period of time if we happen to run into too many monsters and we need to train Rakanishu away. So having stamina potions on you is just as important here as it is in your more classic speedrun. You'll see that the only skill that we're putting points into is Thorns. That's going to be true, except on level 12, we're going to have to pick up Cleansing Aura, which is actually super great. We're going to use that later. And then at level 18, we're the last 2 points that we're going to have at level 18, one into Thorns, one into Vigor. So sorry, your add skill button is going to be red for a little while. You're just going to have to deal with that throughout the entirety of the run until you hit 18. This is actually really important. I wanted to highlight this, why I even stopped it all. These raptors, there are going to be a lot of monsters that don't hit you. Some of them start hitting you and then stop hitting you. So these raptors, or crows, foul crows, whatever they're called, in this particular act, they will deal damage until they get to half their health, and then they will run away from you. They will never attack you again. So unless they kill themselves in one hit, you won't actually be able to finish the job, so it's not worthwhile to stand around for them. The other really important thing is Afflicted. So, or Mishappen is what they start off as. Afflicted, Mishappen, they're the big demons that shoot lightning balls out of their mouth. They will only melee attack until they get to 50% health, and then they will actually run off and only do ranged attack. Attacker takes damage. In Thorn's aura, only returns damage if it is a melee attack. If it's a ranged attack like an arrow or a spell being cast at you, it does not hurt the monster, only melee attacks. So there are going to be a ton of things we're going to say, hey, there's a boss group, you should go kill it, or you should wait for them and get the XP. If I'm running by something, I'll try to highlight it here. It's because they actually won't die. They'll never actually end up dying, so you'll end up wasting your time. So I made a little note to kind of show you that these guys hit you, and then they will never hit you again. you'll see that they start running away from me. So you want to completely ignore them. Very important to note though, ranged attacks do trigger chance to cast. So once we have our chance to cast Charge Bolt, we have our chance to cast Nova. Ranged attacks will set those off, and we are going to abuse that in a couple different places for being able to clear out very specific areas. A Scepter here, finding a Scepter is always good. We're also going to be picking up the Malice later, one for another chance at getting chance to cast Nova gear. But if we actually find all of our gear in Act 2, we can always imbue a Paladin shield, which could get plus to skills, which would be super good. Or a Scepter, which could roll up to 3 separate Paladin skills on them, which would also be absolutely fantastic. So you want to be picking up any magic Scepters that you find, any magic Paladin shields, because there's a cube recipe to reroll those as well, and I'll show that later on. And any white Scepters or white Paladin shields, because we can always imbue them. Now here, I make a decision here, and it's not that it's a wrong decision, but it would have looked better at level 9. We have a skill shrine. A skill shrine means that we're going to be able to kill creatures faster. Once we move on from Rakanishu, we're going to be at players 1 for the rest of Act 1. Everything that attacks us, we want them to die very, very quickly so we don't have to stop running at any point. The skill shrine does mean that things in here, which are a bit higher level, will probably still die very quickly. But realistically, you only ever really want to move on if you got an XP shrine and it still had a lot of time left on it after killing Rakanishu. The skill shrine at this level wasn't a good decision to move on with. So again, you want to keep that in mind. Repairing your gear is very important. You'll see that I just take the shield, I throw it into our swap, just in the off chance that I'm going to roll it later. Using the Barbed Club and 2 Skull Herodric Cube recipe, which will make it a shield of thorns. Also allows it to roll with a prefix, and one of the prefixes available is +1 to Paladin skills. So it could roll as a really, really good shield and also have a huge high base resistance that might be really useful later on. So here we're level 9. I'm okay with moving on at level 9. The only reason why we're moving on so aggressively here is, again, we have the 8 damage in our shield, which means we're going to be returning more damage per hit. But also our Rakanishu spawn was pretty inefficient. Our waypoint was very far away. So if we're going to be getting out of Act 1 on pace with world record, we're basically just going to hope that we hit a lot of boss packs along the way and move on from this point forward. If we need more XP before we get to Andariel, we can always just save and exit and go kill Rakanishu again. Everything here is pretty par for the course. You're just going to want to be progressing while focusing on boss packs that you can actually kill. Archers are not one of them. These mishappens here are not one of them. The Fallen and the Dark Rogues. So pretty simple. Now here's a perfect example. We find a rare armor. Like I was saying earlier, it's going to roll with a lot of different affixes on it. This one just so happened to roll pretty well. It could have had Charge Bolt on it, which would have been nice. So we have hit recovery, life, fire res, poison res, and it repairs its durability. Again, that basically increases the durability strength of all of our other gear. Poison res is kind of nice to have for Andariel. The plus to life and that plus to hit recovery, though, is absolutely fantastic. We are going to hold on to the 2-socket armor. You'll see in my character display directly beneath me, we do have 4 runes that we would like to get in this run. Tal Eth, Neph, and Tyr. Sadly, there's no time to run the tower. The tower gives really bad experience for somebody who can't fight a lot of the different monsters in it. And also they're too strong to fight on anything much higher than players 2 or players 3, which just isn't as fast as Rakanishu. And lastly, killing the countess and getting Tal Eth is all well and good, but since we can't level at the same rate that you normally would on the Paladin, you don't get to use stealth until much later on in the run. Realistically, while I have gotten stealth in multiple Pacifist Paladin runs, I'm really getting Tal and Eth either around the end of Act 2 or in the middle of Act 3, which is a nice little speed buff. We're basically just going to take this 2-socket armor, put it away, and if we happen to get the runes, we happen to get it. But the Pacifist run can't afford to farm the tower because of how inefficient it is. Again, we're on players 1 here. We were close to leveling. We have a huge pack of Dark Rogues. So it's good to run through them. They're going to very quickly die. You saw most of them actually one-shotted themselves because our thorns are and our shield is returning so much base damage. But if it wasn't a boss group and we weren't close to leveling, I probably wouldn't have even have taken the time. You'll see I pop back up to players 8. It looks like I'm going to go do another Rakanishu at the very least. Again, we'd like to be level 11 because that's when we have enough hit points and enough skill points to effectively farm in Act 2. I'm going to go ahead and drop off our excess 2-socket, all these chip gems just so we don't have to empty them if we find another gem shrine. Also, it's always good to take stock of your inventory to see exactly what you have going on. Right now we have 2 rerolls, which means we can make about 20,000 gold if we get lucky. No scepter, and we move on. Going to do another Rakanishu farm here, and then we're going to push forward. Yes, you are losing seconds every single time that you do this. Another great thing you can be shopping for, it isn't necessary, but helps to smooth out the 2 hardest fights for the Pacifist run, is a Wand of Weaken. It will have weaken charges on it, typically somewhere around like 60 charges, and it just is a flat decrease of 33% damage altogether. You don't want to use that when you're fighting something that can be damaged by Thorns aura, because reducing their damage means that you're going to return less damage to them. But later on, there are 2 fights where you are just taking a lot of damage, but not actually able to return a lot, so the weaken wand can definitely help to smooth that out. And you'll actually see later on in this run, I really wish I had it. Hopefully I'll be able to fast forward through a lot of it with some zany music going on, but you're going to see the folly of my hubris, as it were. Really important to note, picking up the Malice is kind of a 100% requirement for this run. Theoretically, you don't need it, but it's really nice to have in your back pocket and can also be a potentially huge time save spike later on. Again, imbuing your last piece of gear to try to find of Nova, or looking for a white scepter or a white paladin shield to be able to imbue. I am looking for boss groups in the barracks, just because we can still quickly kill them and they are worth good XP. I think we actually get blocked by a lot. A lot of mages and a lot of archers are down here this time. So we are going to drop a TP, and then we're going to proceed through the jail and then come back once we have the inner cloister waypoint. Alright, here we're going to come to the inner cloister. Like I said, we're going to grab the waypoint, we're going to go back for the Malice, hopefully picking up a boss pack or 2 if we can manage it. But we want to make sure that we pick that up. And you'll see that we're actually on par with world record pace right now. We are a bit under-leveled, realistically. With the setup that we had, I normally would have reset this run, except that we got that very early skull and then we got the second skull as well, and I really wanted to be able to highlight that and how it can drastically improve your speed in Act 1 even if you get a bad setup or a bad Rakanishu spawn, something like that. Feel free to hold on to the Malice, you don't need to turn it in right away, it's just a waste of time running up to Charcy unless you have to for some reason. Here we're going to be able to pick up the Thorn Scepter. I will swap the blue scepter to our offhand just so we can hold on to it. Again, we're going to try to re-roll that later. Running through the catacombs, we get really lucky on the catacombs here. I'm not going to go over catacombs theory. Basically, you just run down to the bottom left and to the bottom right, and that'll typically get you there. If you don't find it there, go counterclockwise. But we're looking for any boss packs that we can fight, and we're looking to get Andariel as soon as possible. Hopefully level 11 along the way, which is pretty easy to obtain at this point, since we're level 10.7, 10.8 at this point. And we're into the catacombs. This Andy fight goes a little bit tough, just because we're only level 10 when we start the fight, and she wasn't really willing to melee attack. She does her Poison Cloud AoE attack a lot throughout this fight. Go ahead and drink an antidote potion. Antidote potion, while curing you of poison, also will increase your poison res by 50, meaning you're going to take 50% less damage. And you'll see right there, actually, let's highlight that. I leveled up, which means that it's not going to read my shield anymore. I put in my point to thorns. You're going to see me pick up my shield, put it back down, and my left click is going to automatically switch back to melee attack. So we're going to want to swap that back so we don't end up punching something in here and ruining a good run, which looks to be a minute or two ahead of world record. Now, the funny part here, Andariel will 70-80% of the time hit you. She can miss though, so you want to do the same thing we're doing for other creatures. You want to be running directly next to her so that she's more inclined to hit you, do a melee attack as opposed to one of her other attacks, like the one that just cloned us right there. But also means that she will always hit you. You also have a chance to block Andariel, which really stinks. But there's not a lot that we can do about that since so much of our damage comes from our shield. Even later on, keeping your shield on is 9 times out of 10 the right call, even though you might have a chance to block. See, I dropped the town portal because I know I'm going to die. At this point, I'm thinking we have enough health potions. You'll see I'm being very careful. When you pick up your body, it can also cause the Hutbind glitch to happen, and you will go back to melee attack. This is incredibly difficult to manage, especially in the Chaos Sanctuary if you happen to be in a death spiral. Pick up your body, stop clicking entirely, just click one time to get to your body, just click, boom, and then wait. And you can be spamming your hotkey for throw if you want to be, but you want to make sure that it's rebound before you try to click anywhere else. Else you're going to ruin a run.
Impossible.
She is just refusing to auto attack us. Come on, Andy.
I can't.
I know I did this run, but like, help me out here. We're going to go back. If she didn't do that spam attack, we would have had enough potions to finish it off. But one more row of potions, a couple antidotes just to get that 50% damage reduction should be good enough to finish this off here. She's actually missed us twice. The reason why I'm willing to pick up so much of this stuff, even though not all of it is technically worth good money, is because we need something between 40 to 70,000 gold to shop in Act 2, and then after that we need to have another 50 to 80,000 gold to finish off the run. This is probably more expensive than any other normal run just because of the amount of potions that we have to buy and the amount of gear that we have to buy. So every little bit of gold helps out a ton. Again, at least 50,000 gold for Act 2 just to buy a full set of gear once we're at that point.
I work here.
So go ahead, clap yourselves on the back. You just beat Andariel, got up to level 11 or 12 or a little bit higher, and you just killed one of the prime evils. Technically one of the original 7 prime evils, although the prime evils now specifically refer to Mephisto, Diablo, and Baal, but Andariel was there at the beginning too, just for those lore heads out there. You did it. You just completed Act 1. We're going to be moving on to Act 2. Act 2 is probably the most important act of the run, followed by Act 1, and then 3, 4, 5 in that order. There's so much that goes on in Act 2. I'm going to cut this here just so you can review it as its own little package, and we're going to start off Act 2 fresh. But again, clap yourselves on the back because that was pretty impressive. You just killed Andariel without taking a single swing at her. GG, boys. Way to be a pacifist.